Hi everyone, it's me, Diana, the Doll Fairy. And today I present to you the final doll in my Pokemon Zodiac series. Our series began in the summer of 2018 with Solgaleo representing my own star sign, Leo. And since then, with the help of my supporters on Patreon, this ongoing project has brought us 11 more dolls all based on Pokemon that I've chosen to represent each of the Zodiac signs. We're coming full circle and closing out this series with the star sign Cancer. The strengths of Cancer include tenaciousness, loyalty, and sympathy, as they are highly emotional and imaginative. Cancer is represented by the symbol of the crab. When I took a look at crab or crab-like Pokemon options, none of them really stood out to me at first. Some of them are kind of cool looking as Pokemon, but none of them really inspired me to make a doll. But then I started thinking about Paras and Parasect, who I know are actually bug type, and so they're not exactly crabs, they're insects, but they look like a crab. Anyway, I've never really paid much attention to them, but I do think that polka-dotted mushrooms are pretty adorable. And that made me think of Enchanted Forests and that cute little town in Pokemon X and Y with the fairy type gym leader. I think it's called Laver City. And then an image of an adorable little mushroom-themed witch took root in my mind. For this doll, I'll be using the Rosabella Beauty that I had originally prepped to use for my melodic doll. Her tan skin will make a perfect base for some orangey-toned blushing later, and her smile will work really well for this sweet and sympathetic character. Although Rosabella's face sculpt has a more defined eye shape, I start the outlines by creating a more rounded eye shape for her. The Pokemon Parasect has round, lifeless eyes for a creepy and cool reason. It has been completely taken over by the parasitic mushroom on its back. This character won't be controlled by a parasite, but I did want to incorporate this idea just a bit by giving her round and somewhat light or faded looking green eyes with circular glasses. As for her expression, I want her to look basically cute and calm, and maybe even a little playful. Although she will not have a shorter body, personality-wise I was kind of imagining her as the little sister to the other Zodiac Pokemon. Like most of my face-ups, I began with my light brown watercolor pencil for the outlines. For this face, I really want her to have a very soft and warm look. So I don't think I will be using any black. Instead, I will be using orange and red tones in the outlines, with somewhat darker browns as well. For the irises, I'm going to go with yellowy grassy greens, but I'm going to try to keep the colors light and soft instead of too vivid or jewel-toned. As I mentioned before, I intend for her blushing to be quite orange in tone, since after all the Pokemon is orange. But I also think it will look good with the light green eyes. So I grab a bunch of orange, pink, and red pastel colors and build up to some vivid red-orange blush as well as red lips. The color combination is making me think of apples in autumn, which I really love. After that first round of blushing, I spray another layer of Mr. Super Clear Sealant. After it dries, I start on the second layer with some more orange tones for the base of the eyelashes. I go back over this with more brown, however, because I want the orange to be subtle and peek out from behind the brown. I also use these colors in the eyebrows and for the lips. I add some white to create some depth of color in the irises, with the bottom half of the iris being the lightest area. I layer on some more blush, and after that, it's time for the third layer. In this layer, I add some shading to the whites of the eyes. Then I introduce a darker brown to the outlines of the eyes, eyelashes, and eyebrows. The eyes are starting to look a lot more defined, but the colors still feel soft, which is good. And after more blush, it's time for the final layer of color. In this layer, I'm using what I think is burnt umber, my darkest brown, to make the outlines even more crisp and defined while still having some of those warmer tones peek through. I also use some of that brown on the upper part of the irises to give a deeper shadow. After the final spray of MSC, I use some white acrylic paint on the whites of the eyes. I also want to emphasize the irises a bit more, so I used some light green paint to create a highlight. I was really unsure about this at first, but now I feel like it creates an otherworldly, mossy glow kind of feeling, and I really like it. Then I gloss her lips and her face is done. I think it's a great start towards creating the cute character I have in mind for this doll. Her clothing will be a little bit complicated, consisting of a top with uniquely shaped sleeves, and an overall dress with a whimsical bell shape meant to mimic Parasect's large mushroom on its back. I spent some time going through patterns I already have to use as a base for adjustment. Here you see the sleeve shape I sketched out, which will be part of a 2-layer sleeve that creates a shape reminiscent of a crab claw around each hand. For the dress, I start with a bodice pattern I created for my Mega Deance's dress, and then I create a multi-part pattern for a very wide bell-shaped high-low skirt. I will be using this deep magenta fabric for the overall dress, and after it's sewn, I will paint on the polka dots. For the shirt underneath and the claw sleeves, this classy burnt orange color will be perfect. Each part of the sleeve has to be doubled, sewn, and then turned inside out, or right side out, in order to create the pointed crab claw shape. I iron them to make sure they will stay this way. Then for the inner layer of the sleeve, I will be sewing it into a tube shape that I will simply slip onto the doll's arm and will stay detached from the rest of the shirt. The outer layer of the claw sleeve gets gathered at the shoulder, and then attached to the rest of the blouse. Then, when the shirt is all sewn together, I place it on the doll and add the detached undersleeves to complete the look. Next, I sew together the overall dress. I hand sewed everything this time because I was just too lazy to set up the sewing machine, to be honest. I hem the top and the bottom edges of the dress, and then I sew up the back of the skirt as well. Although it isn't perfect, I am pretty pleased with the shape of the skirt. All that's left to do after that is to sew on some Velcro for the back closure of the shirt and the dress. Now the question is how to fill up the volume of that skirt and keep it puffed out. I was going to create some petticoats when I remembered this failed dress I tried to make years ago that was sitting in one of my doll clothing bins. It would be perfect to use underneath the skirt because it's ridiculously puffy, it won't show at all so I don't need to worry about the colors, and I have no qualms about cutting it up. So that's exactly what I did. And look, it does exactly what I'd hoped. And now that the dress is almost done, it's time for my favorite part, embellishment. I definitely think this skirt needs to be trimmed with some lace. I look at a few different options from my lace drawer. My favorite one is this one with a whimsical dot pattern, which seems to fit the vibe of this doll really well. But since it's a snow white color, I will need to tea stain it. I fill a bowl with some hot water and put in a tea bag. Then, once the tea is ready, I put in my lace and make sure it's consistently sunk into the tea by weighing it down with a couple of forks. Then I leave it for a few hours. While that's being stained, let's work on making a cute witch's hat to match the dress. Don't mind that I'm using a sketch I did of Mickey Mouse as scrap paper here. I used this little hair clip that's about the right size as the starting point for the pattern I'm creating. I want this hat to be wider and chunkier than this skinny hat, so I keep that in mind when making the pattern. When it came to sewing the pieces together in a way that would hide the seams, I really didn't know what I was doing, and I definitely didn't approach it in the right order. So don't do this the same way that I did it. It will leave the inside of the hat messy instead of seamless. However, I think it turned out really well considering, and luckily you can't see the messy underside anyway. Plus, it actually fits. After removing the lace from the tee and letting it dry outside for a while, it's the perfect ivory color. I stitch it onto the hem of the dress, but I stitch exactly on top of the stitches I made before when I hemmed the skirt in order to avoid a mess of stitches along the bottom. Next, let's give our girl some glasses. This was actually a lot easier than I expected it to be. I used very thin gold jewelry wire and a round wooden dowel to shape the circular frames of the glasses. There are no actual lenses because I see no need for them. They'll only create annoying reflections when trying to photograph the doll. Now let's get to painting on some details. I guess I lost the footage or just forgot to film it in the first place, but I made these adorable little mushrooms out of Apoxie Sculpt back when I made some of the details on Mew and Mewtwo, and I had extra epoxy that I had already mixed. I'm painting them a bright coral color that coordinates with the shirt and dress, but does not perfectly match either. I dry brush the cream-colored underside of the mushrooms with some peachy brown for a realistic touch. For her shoes, I'm using these gorgeous brown boots from a cerise hood doll, but I'm dry brushing them with a darker brown for a weathered look. Here you can see the subtle but significant difference it makes from the original. Now for polka dots. I used a dressmaker's pencil to create some soft outlines for where the spots should go all over the mushroom skirt. I refer to the official artwork of Parasect for the shape of the spots, which seems to be horizontal oval shapes. I also placed these spots on the hat, which is going to look really cute. The yellow I'm using has a slight peachy orange tint, and it stands out really nicely against the deep magenta. I paint on the spots, and then I end up going over them again in a second layer just to make sure that they are all opaque and vivid. There were so many spots that it did take a while, but it was so satisfying to see how the dress went from cute to completely whimsical. I also paint spots on the mini mushrooms, but these spots are more rounded in order to look like the mushrooms on Paris. After that, I coat the mushrooms and the shoes with Liquitex matte varnish to protect the paint. Time for some hair. I'm going to be using these grassy green yarn locks. You might recognize this color of yarn. It's the same one I used for Virizian's hair. I was a little reluctant to use the same color, but it goes so well with her eyes and creates such a beautiful contrast with the muted colors of her clothing that it was just too perfect to pass up. Plus, it's going to be styled very differently from Virizian's, so I think it'll be okay. I'm gluing the hair right onto her scalp with fast grab tacky glue, which is my favorite glue. I took photos instead of video for this part because I always struggle to get any good footage when I'm gluing yarn wefts. My hands are always in the way and the angle is never right. Look how pretty! She's like a little carrot with her orange blush and leafy green hair. Let's reattach her body before we style it. I'm going to give this cutie little pigtails, and then place the little mushroom accents at each pigtail, reminiscent of Paris's mushrooms. I tuck the mushrooms into the rubber bands holding her pigtails up so that I don't end up getting glue all over her hair. Now for a couple more accessories. She needs a little bag at her hip that will hold herbs and flowers. I was going to make one out of this suede fabric, but then I found this adorable little pouch necklace that I bought when I was a kid that would just be perfect to use as this doll's purse. It already has this cute feather charm on it, but I wanted to add even more detail. I found another little feather charm that I'd been keeping for a while in my random charm box, and I attached that along with some cute beads. I shortened the strap on the purse to sit on her shoulder comfortably. We'll come back to fill it with some plant materials in just a bit. Right now, we're making her a cute little broomstick. I found this stick in my backyard, and I used these trim bits of straw to make the actual bristles. Now to decorate with some cute florals. It's easy for me to go overboard with these kinds of embellishments, so I tried to keep it pretty simple with just a few flowers and leaves to add some cute detail. Her hat needs some florals and a mushroom too. I really love how colorful this ended up being. It just makes me happy to look at this hat. I'm also putting a little sprig in each pigtail as well, which I think makes her look even more adorable. And last but not least, let's fill her little purse with a little arrangement of flowers and plants as well. I imagine she wanders in the forest gathering them to use in her medicinal potions. And I think she's just about ready. Okay everyone, this is it. It's time to work that doll magic and see our final Zodiac doll completed. Here we go! It looks like this doll has some magic of her own. Like many of my Pokemon Zodiac dolls, I chose a Pokemon inspired by the Zodiac sign, picked a secondary theme, and then ran with it, ending up with a brand new character who seems to have their own personality. Most of the dolls in this series have been epic and elegant, and I wanted this one to be firmly in the cute category. I feel like this doll definitely ended up embodying my vision for her, and I'm proud of that. I really like her outfit, and I like a lot of her details, like her glasses, mushrooms, hat, and her floral accents. Even though she and Virizion have the same hair color, they give off drastically different vibes. In an upcoming video, we'll take an in-depth look at each of the Pokemon Zodiac dolls. I'll tell you a bit more about my headcanons for each of their characters, and we can talk about which ones ended up being our favorites. Keep an eye out for that coming soon. If you are new to my channel, please feel free to check out my Pokemon Zodiac playlist so that you can see all of the dolls in this extensive series, and let me know what you think of them. Please be sure to like and subscribe to the Doll Fairy if you haven't yet. This series may be coming to a close, but that means the door is open to try out so many new things and new forms of doll magic. I can't wait to see where it brings us, and I hope you will come along with me on that journey. I would like to thank my wonderful Patreon supporters for everything they do to keep this channel running, and all the encouragement they've given me as I've been working through this video series. If you are interested in becoming a supporter and gaining early access to videos, seeing bonus content, and taking part in exclusive collaborations and contests, consider checking out the link to my Patreon in the description below. I hope you like my little Parasect girl, and I hope you've enjoyed watching this series. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and be sure to tell me what new things you would like to see on this channel going forward. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I will see you all again very soon for more doll magic. Bye!